Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farrukh Pitafi. Once again we are going to talk about Pakistan's electoral politics, and we are going to talk about the Parliament of Pakistan as well. Finally today the Parliament of Pakistan, the National Assembly, passed the Finance Bill 2020-2021. And now we know that today was quite an interesting scene, because initially it was decided that the voting is going to take place through the voice vote, and at that time perhaps the opposition came up with this clever idea of shouting louder than the treasury benches. When that actually created some confusion, a second vote was taken. Then there had to be a third vote count, and at that time the Prime Minister of Pakistan and the Deputy Speaker also joined the National Assembly's floor, and at that time the votes were counted, and we saw that the motion passed with the 172 vote absolute majority mark. That is not all. There were statements coming from the government, there were statements coming from the opposition. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari actually protested the way the whole thing was conducted, and interestingly today the leader of opposition on this crucial day was not present. That is not all. 30 members of opposition party were missing in action, AWOL, or whatever you may call it. There's one aspect. Then of course we keep on talking about the electoral reforms. Electoral reforms are important because this has been a reason for a lot of crisis, conflict in this country, and that is not all. The government is trying to actually bring in two aspects to this system. One, the e-voting. Two, the I-voting. The e-voting is the electronic voting through electronic voting machines, and the I-voting is internet voting for the expatriate Pakistanis. We are going to actually try to focus on that as well, because there are many aspects which are actually revealing themselves through the technocrats, through the experts, and I'm going to actually try to focus on that as well. Before I introduce the panel, our team has prepared a report for you. Let us watch that first, and then we are going to start the discussion.
The Finance Bill 2021-22 was finally approved by the National Assembly. The session was first chaired by Deputy Speaker Qasim Suri, after which Speaker Asad Qasir presided over the session. The Finance Bill 2021-22 was discussed clause by clause in the House. Finance Minister Shaukat Tareen presented the bill on 11th June, and since then it has been constantly debated upon in the Parliament. In the previous sessions, the bill was amended according to the input received from the Parliament. Finance Minister had announced a reduction and exemption in taxes on various sectors, including agriculture and construction.
In the Finance Bill 2021 as introduced in the National Assembly in Clause 2, 1. In sub-clause 1, paragraph D shall be omitted, and the existing paragraph E shall be renumbered as paragraph D.
Finance Minister Shaukat Tareen said that the government will go after willful tax defaulters, adding that it was necessary to enhance the tax to GDP ratio up to 20%. The minister also dispelled the opposition's claims that indirect taxes had been imposed. He further added that majority of Pakistan's trade sector was not under the tax net. After the completion of the counting process in the House, the National Assembly passed a motion to introduce the finance bill by a majority vote. 172 votes were cast in favor of the finance bill, while 138 votes were against it.
Just let me add two things. One, a caveat at the very start. I ended up calling it a Finance Bill 2020-2021. Of course, one wants to live in the past, but the fact is that I stand corrected. It is 21-22. But let me also read a tweet, actually quote a tweet from Farrukh Habib, who is the Federal Minister of State for Information and Broadcasting. He tweeted that in this session the debate took place for total 93 hours. That is a huge number. And 244 MNAs actually participated in the debate. Cut motions and grants found a debate of 16 hours, 10 minutes, and opposition members also got 16 hours and 5 minutes in this debate. And that is not all. The Senate Senate recommendations also found 1 hour and 20 minutes debate as well. So this seems to actually show you when there isn't that kind of kerfuffle, the kind of confrontation that we discussed that day, physical disputes, then we get a lot of things done. We are going to talk about all these matters and more. In order to help us understand these issues in the studio, I'm joined by Ahmed Jawad Saab, who's Central Secretary Information of the ruling party, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Naseem Siddiqui Saab joins us as an MS Theory, an expert, and who's going to help us understand things from a neutral perspective. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. And then Dana Ehsan Afzal Khan Sahab joins us on Skype. He is going to represent Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program as well. Later we will try to include the voice from People's Party as well. Let us first start with Ahmed Jawad Sahab. Ahmed Jawad Sahab, today, when you look at the numbers, your side is supposed to have somewhere around 178, members, but you ended up garnering only 172. Where were the rest of 6? And why was it that you didn't see it coming? So the Prime Minister had to come in, and the Deputy Speaker also had to leave his post and come vote in support of the government's bill.
Farrukh, I think at the end of the day, perhaps the numbers, whether it is 172 or 178, I think it does not matter.
Okay.
The main thing is that the budget has been passed, and which was speculated to be resisted, and there was a speculation that it might not get through, and there was a challenge from the opposition in last couple of months that the government may not be able to get the budget approved this year, and but at the end of the day, I mean, you have just quoted also Farrukh Habib that 93 hours of debate and discussion has happened, and about 244 MNAs they participated.
Yeah, so, but after 93 hours of debate, you actually have rejected all the cut motions introduced by the opposition. All of them. Not one was accepted. Farrukh, is there a point to the debate then?
Farrukh, I think the purpose of debate in the parliament is that opposition has definitely the right to talk about, give their opinion. But government has a mandate, and I think they do their homework, and they go with their homework and make their own decision. So this decision rests with that. So it's not mandatory that whatever the cut motions are coming, whatever the suggestions are coming, the government has to accept them. So I think it is a good day for government. That little bit of suspense which was left before the approval, that suspense has also gone now, and Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf has been able to approve its third budget successfully, and ending into the fourth financial year from 1st of July. So we hope for the best. Things have gone well.
Okay. You are happy because the motion passed, the bill passed, and that actually proves the pundits wrong who were saying that perhaps the bill will fail, and if it fails, the government falls. That didn't happen. Let me bring in Naseem Siddiqui Saab. Naseem Saab, you're looking at the overall situation. At this moment, everyone is interested in how the Treasury benches members were behaving and how opposition benches. First, the missing 6 members from the government side. one understands that PMLQ was asked to prove that their members were present and they proved it. So where are the government's 6 members? And then there are the opposition's 30, including the leader of opposition. Is there a kind of give and take of some kind of behind the scene agreement that they are not going to actually stop the government, or something else is going on?
Thank you very much, Farrukh. We'll have to see that which members of the government side were not present.
Yeah.
Was they from the Tareen group or some genuine problems?
Tareen group or Behtareen group?
Or Tareen group.
Okay.
Or there were some general problems if somebody is sick or somebody couldn't come for
General,
any good reason.
General problems.
Yeah, general problems.
Yeah.
And for opposition, you can see the non-seriousness of opposition, because if 30 members are not present on the day when the budget is going to pass, so it's a question mark for the opposition people as well on the leader of opposition, when it is said that it's very important and the MNAs who are in the prison, they should be bring into the assembly.
Yeah, Khurshid Shah
and Ali Wazir was brought in.
Yeah.
So why the leader of opposition was not here? If it's a matter of health again, then we can give him an excuse. Otherwise, he has to prove that why he didn't come. But overall, I have seen that in all of the parliaments of world, most of the places, we have seen that there is some hue and cry and there is some fighting as well sometimes. But we should improve, because we should give a good future to our children. So they should learn whatever is happening in the parliament. But government should have listened to some of the cut motions of the oppositions, because if with cooperation you can pass the budget, or you can bring something which is in the mind of the opposition as well. So that would be a great thing, that whole of the parliament agrees on either some points.
Yeah,
so
but
it would be a good example.
Let us be honest. Only a few days ago, we were bemoaning the fact that a government and opposition members were at loggerheads, and they were physically assaulting each other. Do you expect the government to actually be this cordial now?
No, because the both of the parties sat down with the speaker. Speaker played a very important role, and they started behaving at least. Yeah. Even then, somebody was saying Bill Bataudi and Zakuta Jin as well. So there was some grievances.
I'm sorry, don't repeat those names.
Yeah, because
I know that they're supposed to be a parliamentary
language in the assembly,
principle. Yeah. But even if it is used in the parliament, let us not actually pollute our airwaves with that kind of language. Let me bring in Dana Samna Abdul Khan Sahab. Sir, your party was saying that it is going to give the government tough time, that this bill is actually antithetical to the interest of common man, and you will fight it tooth and nail. Where was the leader of opposition, who happens to be the head of your party as well today, sir?
The leader of opposition could not make it today because his brother-in-law passed away yesterday. So, there were some, the family was in mourning and he could not attend because of that. But, the government passed the budget with the bare minimum votes needed to form a government, which is 172. And, after Mengal Saab, with his absence and with the absence of Jamaat-e-Islami, the opposition could have managed the maximum of 161 votes, which would have had no impact on the passage of the finance bill. So, saying that, our party, majority of our party members were there, and but to add on to that, I think the PMLN participated in the debate very well, and they gave their cut motions, and we gave our amendments as well, the recommended amendments. And our party, I've just gotten some figures that the government has accepted over 30 amendments in 6 clauses that were proposed by PMLN. So the budget is not in the same shape as the finance bill is not in the same. It has not been passed in the same shape as it was announced on 10th June. So I think this is what happens, that you announce the budget and then there is a debate, there is give and take, there is a big discussion, and the government has majority, and it is able to passed
But
the finance
since
bill.
you actually mentioned that the opposition could garner 160, 161, the votes the opposition actually could produce was somewhere around 138, I think. So there seemed to be underwhelming spirit. I mean, opposition perhaps didn't want to topple the apple cart, or perhaps the opposition has reached some kind of compromise with the government. Is there a possibility of a compromise?
Not at all. I think, you know, the thing is that, as I said, with the absence of Akhtar Mengal Saab and, you know, Jamaat-e-Islami's absentation from this from today, even if we were able to gather, you know, all the votes of the opposition, we would have been able to score 161 votes. So, you know, even then the finance bill would have been passed. So we tried. We you know, and there was a good discussion on the budget, and you know, this is how it is, how it works, and has been happening since the last 2-3 years since PTI is in government. So I think, you know, yes, there were claims that we would not let it pass, but you know, it's more of politics, I suppose, and we wanted to reject. We do reject the initial budget.
Very quickly, before I come back to the studio, you said that the government actually took your recommendations on board. Can you name those recommendations, some of them?
Yes, we really highlighted the sale tax on, you know, they introduced sale tax on 23 items. And I think, you know, we were very vocal about that. And then also the tax on mobile phones and, you know, on data as well. And I think the government has stepped back from those. And for example, on milk, they're not,
let me refresh the memory of everybody that while the budget speech was presented the same day, at 8 o'clock there was a tweet before your opposition parties could actually comment on the subject, informing the people that the government had actually decided not to levy that tax on data. So I don't know whether it was your criticism or whether it was change of heart of the government before the budget was introduced, but whosoever did it, let us be very happy. Let us be very happy about it. Allow me to move on, sir. I have to actually talk about the I-voting, e-voting as well, and that is important. The Federal Information Minister says that the Prime Minister has asked him to reach out once again to the opposition parties, and not only that, on this bill, which is in my hand, 2020 you know, election amendment bill, and in this he says that the Attorney General of Pakistan is going to give a presentation to the opposition parties as well. Now the question that I have to ask you is that the idea of e-voting has been around for 10 years. We have been trying or toying with the idea, and we have incidentally brought out the same machines that were introduced 10 years ago. Why is it that we are actually rushing this idea? A. B. What about logistics? Because it takes huge number of EVMs for an election, and then producing them might need 3,000 machines or modules per day from now till the election day to actually match the number that is needed.
I think the question and answer both are in your own statement, that why we are rushing for the electronic voting machine.
No, but the rushing bit is about election 2023, 24, and there it seems that you want to implement it now, this election. That won't happen. It will be very difficult.
Which election?
The national election. That
2023.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, first of all, I mean, you have to do it someday, and I think it should have been started maybe a year ago, or that would have been better, that we could have more time for the deliberation and the debates and then implementation and the manufacturing of the EVM. But now, I think if we want to bring in some changes in 2023 elections, it cannot be later than today. I mean, whatever we have to decide, because it still has to go a long way, it has to pass through Senate, it has go to Election Commission, and Election Commission has the right to consult all the parties for the implementation, for the execution of that bill, and that might take a long time. And then comes finally, if it has been decided, the electronic voting machine, and then the manufacturing is asked. So we are already late. So I think if we have to implement in 2023 this bill, I think we should be even doing more than rushing. We should try to do it as early as possible if we want to make it happen. Otherwise, if just continues to be delayed, then perhaps we may not be able to achieve the target in 2023.
Right, but I wanted to understand the reason that that rationale of actually adopting such a scheme, right? Is it only because you want to make sure that elections are undisputed? Because 2018 elections, you used RTS, the country used RTS, and remember how it actually blew up and how it created all the controversy. So, do you honestly think that use of machines will do away with the idea of people not accepting results?
Farrukh, there is no comparison between RTS and electronic voting machine. These are entirely two different technologies. One is used for the, just transmitting the results from one place to another. This is an electronic voting machine which will be present at each polling station. It will be storing the results, and then, of course, the mechanism of picking up these machines and taking the data and compiling them, that I cannot comment at this moment, because Election Commission has still to devise the whole implementation plan, that how it is going to work. But what I can clarify is that based on our experience in 2018 election about the RTS, and I think this is one major objection from opposition, because they try to justify that because of the technology last elections, we had doubts about the results. So now again, but we must clear in our mind that these are entirely two different scenarios. RTS...
No, but let me qualify. There are three things that you want to do right now. You want to digitize. So first is voter verification. That is the first module. The second one is the casting of vote. That will actually need the EVM physical one. And the third one that you want to still incorporate is RTS. And
that is RTS, transmitting the results.
Yeah, exactly. You have to do it as well. The problem right now is that the simple Android software of taking a Form 45 and transmitting it to the Election Commission became so controversial. And here you are talking about millions of votes being stored in machines that are going to be used only once in 5 years.
Farrukh, your question is very pertinent, but I think this is the same reason that even Prime Minister has now asked Fawad Chaudhry Saab to talk to opposition, so that such questions can be asked by the opposition and their answers can be provided technically. That is why, first of all, it is going to be a presentation by the Attorney General. I mean, the second stage could be the technical experts who might be explaining further details of the whole technology and the whole concept. So that is the very purpose that there is a need that this kind of discussion should happen, whether in National Assembly or in Senate, and later on in election commissions. Only then we can move forward.
Let me go to Naseem Siddiqui Saab. Naseem Siddiqui Saab, one argument that we made, because we were discussing electoral reform yesterday as well. So one argument that was there is that there are two parts of the equation. One, the rational one. These machines, electoral process and all that, and we keep on amending and improving them. The other one is the irrational part. Irrational part being political parties not accepting results when they don't win. It has been happening since 1948. It continues to this day. you can, I will be glad if you can mention one example in the entire history of Pakistan where election results were accepted by all. This irrational part of the equation will not be fixed by fixing the already fixed part, that is the rational equation. So what do you do with that? And then this perception that there are powers who might meddle, that is also an irrational part of the equation. Is it not essential that there should be a debate on fixing the irrational part rather than the rational one?
Farrukh, you have raised a very good point. The main problem is the irrational point. Because as you mentioned, from 1948 till now, whoever lost the elections, they never said that it was not a fair elections. So first of all, they have to go for the irrational part. Then they should come to the rational part, because it's the duty of the National Assembly members, because people of the Pakistan have sent them in the assembly not for the perks and salaries or for good things, just to solve the problems of the poor people of Pakistan. So they should sit down together, and it's the duty of the government that they should keep them or bring opposition into the dialogue, whatsoever. They have to bring them in the dialogue. And there should be a dialogue, or there should be demonstrations, and there should be suggestions from oppositions that what are their grievances for this electronic voting machines, because the 2013 election was RO's election, then it was RTS elections failed. So now they should come to some point where the point you mentioned, irrational one, that should be sorted out first.
Yeah, but is there a way to fix that part? Because remember one thing, political parties as an institution don't have that kind of democracy. That means that there are certain people who will be calling shots, Sharifs, Zardari, Bhuttos, and then of course other parties, including PTI as well. And their whims or opinions of certain or few people will dominate their public posturing.
They should show maturity now when they are in the assembly, and when they should decide that they are going to just make happy their leaders, or they want to make happy the people of the Pakistan. So they should sit down together and should work together.
Should is not could, but there is something missing there. We are going to talk about that later in the program as well. Let me go back to Rana Ehsan Afzal Khan Sahab. Rana Sahab, your government, when your party was in government at center in Punjab, you were actually carrying out pilot projects for biometric verification, voting as well. That was actually an initiative that was introduced during your time. And then, of course, e-voting at that time was also being debated. Why is it that all of a sudden you have changed a direction entirely and now you oppose all three?
Before we discuss what they want, we need to understand that when you're talking about electoral reform, you cannot go solo. You cannot bulldoze what you think is right, because you have to include all the stakeholders, be them in the parliament or outside the parliament. So a debate has to happen and consensus has to be built for electoral reforms. If you bulldoze them through the National Assembly or even through the Senate, if you have a majority, which you don't, but even if you do, it's not going to be effective when you're talking about electoral reform. And electoral related legislation has to be neutral, impartial, objective, and has to come through consensus. So that is the foremost thing before we discuss EVM or any of the amendments they want. When we brought the 2017 electoral reforms, Isagdar took almost, I don't know, there were 40 or 50 meetings with the opposition in the committee room. So there was a thorough debate, and then we also included parties which were not in the parliament. So that process cannot be skipped. If you do that, and if you do not listen to the concerns of the opposition and even your alliance parties, and you pass through a system which you think is correct, how will you say that you're going to have free and fair elections when you don't?
Rana Ehsan Afzal Sahab, before you answered the question I asked, I'm glad that you actually pointed out the need for consensus. For political parties to have consensus, first, each political party is supposed to have consensus within, right? It seems that your party lacks that because we haven't had a clear vision coming from your leadership about the process. The opposition leader talks about giving certain seats or creating certain seats for the expatriates. I'm going to talk about I-voting later, but I just wanted to highlight that point. The rest of your party kind of doesn't agree with this perception. Then there seems to be another problem. But there are two people from the orbit of your party. One your member, one who was your former interior minister, who actually kept their seats vacant. One has just joined, that is Chaudhry Nisar in Punjab. But Ishaq Dar Sahab still keeps his seat in Senate vacant. Is it not true that your party lacks cohesive direction at this moment?
I think the direction is very clear, and it is that we need to involve the ECP and we need to involve all the stakeholders. That is why the APC, the All Parties Conference. So whatever decision, Shahbaz Sharif might have a different opinion, Khaqan Abbasi might have a different opinion, but when everyone sits together, obviously all pros and cons are discussed for each point, and then comes the consensus. So I agree with you that there could be different opinions within our party on how things should be for dual nationals voting, and whether they should be having reserved seats or whether they should be just voting for the constituency MNAs or MPAs. But then again, the background
very quickly, taste of pudding and its eating. Is your party pro EVM or anti EVM?
Our party is pro consensus, and our party is against bulldozing and going solo and going for a system. If the consensus is made amongst the APC for EVM, we are with it. But if it has to come through that. It cannot be bulldozed. You cannot.
But opposition parties are supposed to have an opinion, right? Consensus is something you may get or you may not get, but you have to have an opinion about the matter.
In the majority of the countries, it is only working in a few countries, maybe a dozen countries all over the world. So there are many issues to the EVM system, and the main thing is that you want to go for EVM on more than 1,000 seats. In all provinces in the National Assembly, all of a sudden, and you have, in just 2 years, you're not going for a prototype, there is far less time, so this has to be progressive. Even if we agree that, yes, we'll go for EVM, you cannot implement it in 2 years. So there are many issues. Even the EVM.
I'm going to come back to you. Allow me to actually come to the studio. I have to ask another question. And actually, that is Ahmed Jawad Sahab. It has two parts. One part is internet voting for the expatriates. There seems to be a whole host of third-party technical reports warning Election Commission or Government of Pakistan that the softwares that we've used in the pilot projects are not ready. They're hackable, and that's why they might be continued in pilot or by elections, not in the main elections, right? So why are we actually still focusing on those softwares rather than actually expanding the scope of debate on there are other ways to do it, right? Postal ballots, still an idea that can be used in the expatriate community. Then embassy voting, then a hybrid system where you can create an electronic signal or vote and then also a paper trail. That is one question. Secondly, why is it that while opposition lacks a clear direction, they are talking about consensus, not about the merits of the issue? Why is it that your party gets sentimental on ideas which perhaps are not ideological issues? EVMs are not, or IVM, I-voting these are not issues that are ideological. But wherever we listen to or go to on various fora, PTI people get very sentimental about this thing.
Farrukh, I don't know who all get sentimental, but at least I don't get sentimental.
5 minutes ago, you were also getting sentimental. Let
No,
me remind
I
everybody.
wasn't.
Okay.
I was always explaining you. We have already talked about EVM, and now
voting.
yeah, now you are talking about internet voting. For many countries, how to involve their diaspora scattered in a foreign country in different cities. That's basically a challenge. And there are many countries who are using internet voting because it's the most convenient for a scattered diaspora. For example, in bigger country like USA or in Canada or even in smaller countries, it's not easy for everybody to travel all the way to come to the embassy and give their votes.
Postal ballot?
Postal ballot can be considered, but I think at the moment the most convenient way of voting which is used by many countries. So there is no, question mark on that. Yes, on the software
can you identify the strongest or successful established democracies where it is being used? The US is not doing it.
Australia, New Zealand.
India is not doing it. Australia is still questioning it.
No, I'm not talking about EVM. I'm talking about the I-voting, the internet voting for the diaspora scattered in foreign countries.
Yeah, America is not using it. They use postal ballots. India keeps on debating it, hasn't used it yet. You spoke about Australia. Perhaps that is the case, but that is also open to debate at this moment because it is thought that they have great resources, but despite that, these softwares are thought to be integrity-wise compromisable.
I think the debate of adopting a technology, debate about adopting a mechanism, it does not start what are the examples, which countries are following it. There can be a mechanism which perhaps no other country might be following. But if you within your country, within the legal, the technological concepts, you think something is good to reform the procedures, you can still adopt it. This is not the benchmark that how many countries are following this thing. Time and again we go to this thing, on the EVM also, there are a lot of countries, they did not successfully adopt this thing and they opted out. Germany, they started and they opted out. Yes, we can study those cases and we can work on the gray areas which perhaps might have been faced in Germany or in India.
Okay.
But I think we cannot just rule out that, okay, because America is not doing, India is not doing, so we cannot do.
Right. I understand the argument here, but my concern, and I kept on asking other people also, Siddiqui Saab, why is it that we have to go for the first world